Hi, everyone. Um, my name is Ebube, as they've said. I'm a designer and animator, and also an upcoming art director. Upcoming. However, you can call me a motion designer because that's really where those two things sync. Before we proceed, if I look at you and please don't squeeze your face. If I look at you, just say. All right. That's a very ugly picture of me. However, growing up, I didn't really have unlike most people who maybe they drew when they grew up or stuff like that. I didn't really have that background. Maybe I drew a little bit when I was in primary 6 or something, but that was just really it. So there wasn't really a drawing or artistic part to me. However, I loved animated movies a lot. Animated movies like The Flintstones, Samurai Jack, Powerpuff Girls, these were things that I really loved. And it's crazy because even at a very, very young age, when I would watch these cartoons and maybe, for example, had those CDs, I would pause them and I would just rewind and then pause, play again, and then rewind. And I mean, we kind of broke a couple of DVDs when we were younger, but it was kind of the way I was really, really interested in how things just kind of moved, in regards to design. In regards to animation, actually. So these were some of my favorite cartoons growing up. Things like Digimon, Biker Mice for Mars, Mega XLR. I mean, for those who know Mega XLR. I also, one of my first 3D movies that I can remember that I loved so much was Flushed Away. It's a British movie. It's about a British mouse that kind of got flushed away. He's like a pet. And I really love that movie so much. I think that's, in fact, this movie I watched maybe 5, 10 times. I can't remember how many times I did. And also, even till now, I still watch a lot of these movies. If you see me anywhere, no matter where it is, even if you might think I would love being a motion designer, I might love film. I actually love more animation than I do love film. Anytime I get the opportunity to, I would watch as many animation as I could. And I cannot leave out anime, because anime was kind of a very big part of, so things, I mean, I didn't watch a lot of them, but things like Naruto, Akira, Full Metal Alchemist, these were I kind of watched them over and over and over again. So these animations were kind of I think the start, or the spark, basically, of how, I got into animation or motion design. Again, between my childhood till now, I didn't really do anything more creative apart from just watch movies or steal money from my mom's purse and go and buy animated movies when I could. However, that was not supposed to see that. However, when I went to Cornell University to study chemical engineering, and in my second year, the second semester actually, somebody introduced me to Photoshop. It's crazy because I just took his hard drive to borrow. I wanted to get a movie from it, and then I took his hard drive, and I found Photoshop tutorials on the drive. And I was like, this looks interesting. And so I asked him for Photoshop CX6, if you can remember. And I took that, and I started making stuff. This was the first stuff I made. That's me, actually, just in case. These were terrible. But I love them so much. I mean, to me, these were amazing, if I want to be honest. I loved it. I mean, I actually thought this was really cool when I did it. And now that I look at it, I'm just like, wow, there's even a small tear down there. However, this is really how design really started for me. It was really photo manipulation, a lot of photo manipulation, and I really love photo manipulation a lot. I did continue doing that while I was in Cornell University, and I would take as many pictures as I could, and I would just try to just do a lot of, again, tiny manipulation here and there. So all of these dogs and wings, even these do not enter, all of these were just added in. And again, this was me just playing with Photoshop, because I really did not know what I was doing. This was just trying out if I was going to be creative or not. Eventually, I left photo manipulation and I went into photography because it was a little bit stressful. I was getting tired because I wasn't moving forward, but that was really it. So I got into photography. I started taking a couple of pictures. I mean, they were not amazing anyway, but I was in school then, university then, and so I became a photographer. However, in 2014, I saw somebody animate something in After Effects. I'd never seen After Effects before, so when he started working on it, I was like, what's that tool? And he said, it's After Effects. You can use it for animation. It's pretty cool. I was like, okay, fine. I want to try it. I want to see if it's something I can do. And he gave me the copy of After Effects CS6 to be specific. And then he said, these are some tutorials. Go and play around. Come back next semester and let's see where you get into. So next semester I came back. He kind of gave me like a project to do. Sadly, I can't find that exact project. I mean, I tried, but I can't find it. However, I can find the second project I ever made. It is very terrible, so please, just kind of like second project I ever made. And I just kind of put a lot of things together. I saw a lot of stuff everywhere. You see a lot of lens flares, a lot of blinking, a lot of shiny stuff. I just really just added as many cool stuff as I could. I tried to make like what the school looked like. I mean, it's not all that terrible. I'm sorry, it's terrible, but I just tried my best to like do something cool at the time. And literally, this is literally my second project ever. And at this point, when I was done with this, I don't know, something just came over me. I was like, I think I'm supposed to be doing motion design. This is my second project. I think I'm supposed to do animation. I don't know if that was good judgment or not, but I continued regardless. And around, after this project, I didn't really do a lot of projects. So around, let's say 2016, I decided that, yes, I'm sure I want to do motion design. So I dropped out of school. Very stupid move, actually. And I will say that, please, if you have siblings or anybody who is thinking of dropping out, it's a stupid idea, don't do it, and I would not advise anybody to. I mean, I'm sure I know a couple of people who have done so as well, but for me, it wasn't a decision I made because I knew exactly what I was doing. It was a decision I made because I just felt like I was in chemical engineering. I didn't like chemical engineering. I loved this. Yes, I've been doing it for 1 year, but it was just enough for me to know that I wanted to do more of this. So after I dropped out, the first thing I realized was I was very bad at design. That was the first thing I realized. I didn't know anything about design. I mean, I was playing with After Effects, but I didn't know anything about design. So I spent between late 2016 to maybe around like 2019 just learning about design and animation. And I did basically everything, right? So from logo animation, so from logos to logo animation to poster designs to illustration and finally to doing like small animations like this, which were pretty cool. So I think that's kind of like a very rough idea of how I really got into this. But honestly, it's kind of very like, how would I put it, compressed, because those 2 years were very rough for me. I remember telling my parents I wanted to drop out, and when they heard I wanted to drop out, it was like, my dad was like, that's not my son, my son is not going to do that. So I left home since I'm not his son. And I actually ran away. And for like 3 months, I wasn't living with my parents. I was living with my friend. I was kind of just like hustling it through. But I was still doing design. Like, again, all of the other things you kind of seen, all of those things happened during that period. And I was so excited that I went to product design. I mean, I designed like an app for a project. I can't remember exactly. The name of the project was like Pinfoot or something like that. And I designed the app, and I was like, okay, great. That means that when I did the app, a lot of people loved it at that time. And so they were like, you're a very good designer. I was like, yes, I'm supposed to be doing this. Exactly. However, there were some very key pivotal moments in my career that kind of got me to where I am today. One of them, in late 2018, when I would say I was very hungry, if I'll put it that way. And I mean that in the literal sense. Somebody reached out to me, and they were like, do you want to work on a campaign for a political campaign for like this billionaire? And I was like, why not? I mean, I'm not doing anything. I was just at home, so why not? So this was kind of like my first major project, and it ran for like 5 months. And and it was, pretty inspiring because I learned a lot of stuff on the project. He didn't win, just in case you want. The second one was in 2019. I don't know if any of you know Council. Council is Smiling Heart. So he got me a job. I worked with him on Freak the Fuck Out, and he was like, you know your stuff. So he recommended me for a project, Omnibiz. This was like my first explainer video I ever did. It was 3 minutes long, and I kind of hated everybody at that agency because they stressed my life throughout. And I'm not even going to talk about how much they paid me. Then in 2019, somebody introduced me to an agency in London. I was working with them as an external freelancer, so it was kind of like they would give me work over the weekend. I would do it over the weekend and then get out. And this was kind of like this happened throughout the whole of 2019. It was kind of like the biggest part of my life, and most likely fed me throughout that period. However, I did gain some experience during that period. I worked with a couple of brands that were, to me, I was kind of just doing it for money, but at the end of the day, I was working for like cool brands. So I worked for brands like Warner Brothers, Pepsi, Gillette. What we're really doing was just creating very social media posts, Snap ads, stories, and all of that. It was pretty cool. I learned a lot because I think my first project I ever did with them, that was when I kind of really knew that, again, I should be doing this. Because at this point, I'm still trying to find something to just tell me that I didn't make a mistake dropping out of school. So the first ever project I did was with Warner Brothers. Today, they still use that project. I see it everywhere, all of the ads. And it was three, I think like 30-second ads. And when I did it, I think they have like a review cycle, and where they pick the top 3, from all of the creatives. And they picked all my 3, I didn't pick anybody's, and I was like, interesting, wow. So that means I'm good, And so this kind of paid bills, and also gave me a ton of experience. I think it was kind of the first time I kind of came in contact with something with creative direction, because I saw the way they kind of broke down a brief, the message, and all of that. So it was pretty interesting just seeing how they kind of worked compared to like how I had been working before. So again, there was a lot of learning experience here. Late 2019, I have a friend, his name is OJ, he works at PiggyVest. He got me a job. He got me this job at PiggyVest. It was just to do 2 explainer videos. And I think this was kind of where like a couple of people started noticing my work, because the video is loud, but it's pretty interesting. And I think at that time, not a lot of people had done work that looked like that at that time, at least to my own understanding anyways. And finally, in 2020, I got my second explainer, which was for Medbury. And I think this was kind of like my best explainer, if I'm being, even till now, I still think it's my best explainer, but I've probably done other stuff, but I still think it's my best one, because I spent a lot of time in terms of like illustration. I remember when I built out these trees. I'm not showing the entire project, but I remember when I built out these trees and like the rest stylized, and I was like, you did this without actually like no reference, no nothing. I just sat down on my computer and just did that. So I built out an entire library of assets within that time, and it was, again, it was pretty cool because I didn't know that I had this in me, honestly, at that time. And finally, in 2021, I got this from Da, and I think this project, even till now, I still get, like, people just come call me, I'm like, I saw your Bicons project, and that's the reason why I'm reaching out to you. So I think this was kind of like the biggest project I ever did, at least to me anyways, because the amount of people who kind of reached out and the amount and the work I got from Bicons, just from this video alone, kind of just took me to that next level. I think from here, from Bicons, I just kept getting jobs, honestly, like, constantly. And they don't stop calling, to be honest, for real. I'm sure you have seen this reel before, but I'm going to play it again. This is what my work looks like. I wanted to actually make a new reel, but I hope you kind of see that later on in the future.
Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. Yeah, I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys. Man so tough, but man's keep walking. Just too sharp with the prize. White girls let it tell me I'm awesome. Yeah, hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my piece, use caution. Cold like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the. Wake up, get out the sheets. We came for one man, forget my peace. You take the west side, take on the east. I'ma put him in the cage, never let out the. I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys. Man so tough, but man's keep walking. Yeah, just too sharp with the prize. White girls, let her tell me I'm awesome. Yeah, hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch me, please use caution.
Thank you. So basically, all of the work, all of that, all the things I went through, dropping out of school. I mean, right now I would say that it wasn't a waste of time, but I'm just glad it worked out for me, honestly. I'm really grateful for that. All right, so I'm going to break down kind of work I did recently. I would not say that this is my best work. My best work is still hidden, actually. However, it's kind of the work that I was a little bit elaborate on it, and I really want to kind of break down that process. I think motion design for most people the process is kind of very mysterious. Like, a lot of people don't really know exactly what goes on. I mean, you could know a few things about it. I know I'm supposed to make storyboards, I'm supposed to make this, but what does that process look like from beginning to the end? Luckily for me, I kind of covered the entire process, the entire pipeline, and that also includes creating things like scripts as well. So I really, throughout my journey, I tried my best to kind of learn every single part of it, because something I noticed was emotion design, if you're not part of the process from beginning to the end, and they just bring you somewhere in the middle, there's a huge chance for you to kind of like miss out on like some of the information. So earlier this year, Jeniza Brands, owned by Balanle Banwo, kind of reached out to me, and she said, "Oh, we just worked on a brand identity for a company who is like a VC, and they wanted to kind of create like a brand film, right? They want to create a brand film for their investors." Ouch. Okay. So initially, when she mentioned this to me, what she said was that she wanted to just focus on identity. However, when we spoke to the client, what they kind of mentioned to us was, we don't just speak about the identity because, who just wants to see pixels moving on the screen or like typography? Our investors and entrepreneurs want to see how we've come, what we've done in the past, and all of that. And so during that conversation, we kind of got out a couple of things from what they wanted from that video. The first one was that they wanted to communicate what the Consonance brand story was. They wanted to show, like, I think they had existed for as far back as like 2014, and they've done a lot of work, and they didn't just want to show the identity and like, oh, we just rebranded, but what exactly, what have we done as a company? Second thing, they wanted to highlight past achievements. I think this was very key, and the managing director at the time, Mr. Bolaji, kind of mentioned that this was kind of important for them because they needed to get new entrepreneurs and they wanted to get new investors. So, showing what they had done before was kind of very important to them. And then, third thing, that they wanted to showcase the new visual identity. However, they wanted to find a way to link that visual identity to all of the things they've done before. So why do we create a new identity? Well, it's because we want to kind of renew the commitments we have to our old investors, but also try to, attract new investors and entrepreneurs as well. And obviously, finally, was to attract investors and entrepreneurs. They kind of call them builders, but I mean, I think entrepreneurs kind of work well. So one of the first stage of the process is usually concept development. And I think that this is kind of the most crucial part of the work. This is where you kind of build out things like the concept statement. You kind of build out what the project is going to look and feel like, and the likes. So the concept statement we kind of came up was innovative for impact. They had done a lot of work, but something I got out of the discussion that we had was that they were building very custom solutions for every like builder or every entrepreneur that came on board. And so it wasn't just like, oh, you came here, take what we give A, and then it was very custom. And they kind of showed us the process of that. And so they weren't just making like other VCs that you probably have seen. They weren't just making stuff or just having investors for the sake of having investors. It was kind of like every investor that we pick needs to be able to have a certain type of thinking. And they wanted to, one of the things that they mentioned to me was system thinking, meaning if you're an investor or you're an entrepreneur, I want you to think like you are building a house, but think about Lego sets. So think about all of those smaller companies like Lego sets, and then we're trying to build something much larger. So 4 things they kind of mentioned that was, again, during the conversation that we needed to focus on was they made localized solutions, again, custom solutions for people. 2, they were very keen on innovation, and so every entrepreneur or every investor that came on board needed to come with innovative ideas as well. Collaboration, even if you're an investor, it's not just to put your money in there and just leave. You needed to be able to be part of the process as well. So it's not just take my money and then come and tell me what's going on, give me annual reports. You need to be part of the process. And then finally, system thinking. As you're investing and as you're building, think about the other companies that are in the network and how they kind of function together. So we developed a tone of voice, and this tone of voice kind of applied to the voiceover mostly, and you kind of hear that in the end. And 3 things was very important. It was needed to sound confident. It needed to sound like they were, I said confident, but it's more like authoritative, if I'm going to be honest, and collaborative and very ambitious. The next thing was to develop a look and feel. And so 3 things was very important. It needed to be simple. The people we were talking to they're not designers, they're not very extremely young people. These are people who want to look for people who can build something for them. So not a lot of extra details or things that don't need to be there. Like, for example, if you look at my beg video, you kind of see like a lot of things moving around. They didn't really want that. They wanted something very simple. Very simple, if I put it that way. The next was very modern. It needed to look like something that came out of today, and something that could work in the future as well. How do we get so far? Sorry about that. Then it needed to be object focused. So remember the 4 things that we kind of wanted to focus on: localized solutions, system thinking, innovation, collaboration. They wanted to show that and kind of isolate that and show people that that's what they were really about. They didn't want to just leave that out of the box. And then ambient lighting. I think ambient lighting kind of ties back to, that modern feel. If you look at most of the new, I think a very good one would be, I don't know if you know that, but I wish I could play that. It was Ize. It was done by Tendril. And it was for a corporate brand, and it was very well lit. You could really see like all of the elements and parts of it. So this was kind of like the mood board we kind of came up with. Again, focusing on those core things. Object focus, most of these things don't have anything around them. They're just very isolated. And so it was kind of important to have that. Very simple, again, very simple shapes and simple, again, trying to pass across a very complex message, but using very simple forms. And then the lighting. Right, you can see that the shadows aren't so dark. You can kind of tell what's kind of going on when you look at the image. So this was the movie we pulled together, and we kind of sent to the client. Then we started to come up with some design elements. The first one was typography. Typography was kind of easy because they're just done in new. They're just rebranded, if I put it that way. So PP Noir Machina was kind of their primary typeface. For colors, they had a color called Consonance Clear, and honestly, that kind of led to the materials that we kind of used as well. They had a couple of colors, even including secondary colors, but we just wanted 3 colors. We didn't want to kind of push, but again, we're trying to go for something simple, so adding a lot of colors was just going to distract from what we're creating. In terms of materials, we wanted to use both clay and wood. We eventually did not use wood in the final because wood, again, it was a little bit distracting when we started working and doing some of that initial exploration. And finally, lighting. we came up with two types of lighting. The first one was obstructed lighting. I couldn't find the image that Bonali sent to me, but the image sent to me was, it was a clear ground, and there was a tree, and then light, like it was sunlight, and sun was kind of beaming through on the floor, and you kind of see like patches of light on the floor. And she mentioned that was kind of like initial inspiration for the work she did. And so we kind of created like obstructed lighting where you have, like a leaf or something kind of blocking the light. And then we kind of had studio lighting where it's much more, like a lot more well lit, and have like kind of like rim lighting at the end. And so these were kind of like the design element that kind of went, again, from our mood board that we developed. These were kind of like design elements we came up with, work with. These were initial star frames. We did this at the beginning because we had not started designing stuff, and we wanted to send something to the clients as quickly as possible, so that they don't start saying, "Oh, what is it going to look like?" So we came up with this, and you will notice that there's no obstructed lighting in this. And the reason was when we first sent to the client was like, "Oh, awesome," and then we sent it to Bonali, and Bonali was like, "I don't like that obstructed lighting, so please, can you take it out because it's kind of distracting." I agreed with her, but I was a little stubborn. So, but for this one, I sent it to the client. I was like, "Don't worry, we'll send this to the client, but let's see how that goes." Story and script. Story and script, I don't know, story could mean a lot of things to other people, but for me, story is kind of like the progression, what happens after each thing, and then script is kind of what happens like the details of that story. So for every project we work on, we kind of build like this story flow. It's basically an intensity and time graph, and what it does is it kind of charts how the intensity of the project is going to go about. Intensity here just really means it could be in terms of materials. So it could be in terms of materials. It could also be in terms of activity on the screen. So maybe we start out very simple, and then we go up into something more complex, and then we go back, we kind of resolve to something that's not as low as what we started at. So the flow was simple. We started with the brand story, and next we go straight to the achievement, and then the identity, and then finally call to action. We kind of use colors internally to kind of know what these parts are, so it's kind of easier for us to know. If you look here, it's very small, but every story we build needs to have a hook, and that's kind of very important to us. We then built out a script using exactly the story flow we had. So at the beginning here, we have the hook, and then we have the brand story, and then we have the achievement, the identity, and finally call to action. This little piece here in white, we did not add. That was the client that added it, so that's why it's still in white. We actually went, there was a lot of back and forth with why they wanted to add this into the script, but at the end of the day, we just left it in there because it was kind of like, it needed to be there, so I guess client wins. Storyboards. Every project started with a very rough storyboard. I use Storyboarder, and so it allows me to be very loose. In fact, Storyboarder is so great for this because it will tell you that once you go past 8 lines, you're already drawing too much, so move on to the next story. And kind of the idea here is just build out the story. Don't really care about what it looks like, whether it looks great or not. Just build out a story. And so we usually have like a session where we kind of draft ideas. They don't necessarily have to look good, and honestly, we don't share this. I personally will not share this with the client, but internally with the team I work with, I'll kind of share this with them. However, we then refine that storyboard a little bit, and then make it a little more cleaner. It looks a little bit nicer, something we can send to the client, and it looks something like this. Something about storyboards that is very interesting is when you start with a storyboard, you always think that this is how the story will play. I mean, that's how I usually thought about it at first. But after a couple of projects, whenever I make storyboards, I don't think about how it's going to play. I just think about the best ideas possible. Because when you start thinking about how you're going to animate something in your storyboard, then you're going to start to limit the ideas you can make. So, for example, let's assume I couldn't build out these buildings or create something like that. I would have said, oh, let's find something else. But that was kind of limiting what I could possibly do for this. And so this kind of like what the rest of the storyboard kind of looks like. Again, for each of the storyboard, I think something I would also want to add as well is that before now, when I'm creating storyboards, I usually create storyboards and then move straight into exploration for ideas. But now it's kind of like very different. Every frame is we literally explore every frame. So every frame is literally an exploration. So we take one frame, we explore that frame and try as much ideas as we can till we get to something that we like. And then when we get that, we kind of push that forward. So usually that will happen in the rough stage or the process. But by the time you get to the final frame, you kind of see, this is what you see. But in reality, each of these frames has gone through countless exploration process. Again, this is really just the rest of the storyboard. I usually try as much as possible to be as clean and refined as possible now, because for some clients who don't, if your client is not a designer, your client is not like a studio, they may not really understand what you're doing. So as much as possible, you want to try to refine the storyboard, and that's what we kind of did here. Visual development. So these were kind of like the initial exploration, and I mentioned earlier that we're kind of stubborn about those obstructed lighting. So when we did the initial exploration, we started adding it everywhere, because personally I was like, add it everywhere, and then we'll kind of figure out if it was actually true that it was distracting. And honestly, it was. It kind of was like, there was no way you look at this and you weren't kind of paying attention to like, oh, this leaf that's bending over here, or the details again. It was truly, especially with this one, it kind of just covered everything up. And I actually sent this to Bolanle at Geniza, and she hated it, obviously, because she didn't like any of the obstruction. So we went back to studio lighting and we started doing more development. Every asset that we build is kind of very, we kind of think about it in two ways. The first one is it the focus of the shot? If it's not the focus of the shot, then reduce the detail. If it is the focus of the shot, add more detail. Adding detail and removing detail doesn't necessarily mean that there is less shapes moving around. It could just be that by making something one color, you kind of isolate it, and then everything just kind of blurs out on its own. So here, we wanted to kind of bring emphasis to the building in the center, which was kind of like the Consonance building, and so we made sure that everything around it was kind of isolated. And that kind of went through like that process almost through everything. Here, this is for localized solution. We had kind of two options. And something you also notice with this asset is that they have very ambient lighting. You can tell that the shadows, but those shadows aren't very, obvious. And then we wanted to add rim lighting as well, but rim lighting kind of disappeared on top of a white background. So what we did was just to have bezels. So basically small bezels like this, bevels where you can kind of where the light kind of catches and can kind of see it right there. So those were kind of like our pseudo rim lighting, if I'll put it that way. Every idea that we had multiple color iterations, so we always make sure that we try as much as possible to, see what's possible within that, within every iteration. So these are some of the assets we kind of developed. We tried different things. This is where we kind of tried out wood and all of that. Again, these are just more iterations. I think it was when we did this that we kind of realized that we didn't want to use wood, because it just felt a little bit different, a little bit off. Again, we're choosing 3 colors, and brown as wood. You might see it as wood, but wood is literally just brown if you blow it out. So that was an extra color, and we had to take that out completely. But I think the most interesting part about all of this generally is just the clay material itself. Initially, if you look at some of the, and if I kind of like slide back a little bit, we had clay somewhere here. I don't know if I can kind of, oh, sorry about that. We had clay somewhere, but the clay was a little bit too much. You kind of see it, kind of poking through like the object itself. So we had to reduce the amount of clay that we used, or at least the intensity, so that it just kind of looks nice. I think lighting also plays a good role here, because if you have if you have sun lighting, for example, those shapes will kind of be more obvious, and then with much more ambient lighting, those shapes kind of just disappear into the background. These were some of the final star frames that we kind of developed at the end of the visual development cycle. Animation. As much as I love animation, it's actually the most tedious part of the project, and when I started out, I usually hate it, but by the time I get into it, it's kind of like therapy for me at the end of the day, so it's pretty interesting if I put it that way. We start with previews. Previews is kind of important because it's the fastest way to work. When you create previews, what that does for you as a motion designer is that you can work faster, and you can send a lot of iterations to the client and go back and forth. So we created this, I call them viewport renders, but if you use Maya, you kind of know them as play blast, that we send to the client. So we just create this, we send that to the client. You know, do you like what? I mean, for this project, the client was very. They basically loved a lot of things that we did. So we had to be a lot more critical by ourselves, because I mean the client loved everything, so why not? And so again, preview is also a place where we kind of try different types of like layouts, right? Oh, we want it to move like this, or we want it to come up like this. So even though we have a storyboard, we still have the ability to kind of expand on that storyboard and kind of make something a lot more interesting. But something that's really interesting about previews is that it allows you to know if something you planned out is a lot longer than it should, or is a lot shorter. When we recorded voiceover, we realized that this part, we kind of gave it a very long part in the project, and that's when we realized that part was too long, right? So we started adding more stuff. Eventually, we didn't really go with this layout at the end of the day, but this just kind of shows why previews is important, because you want to test as fast as possible. With animation, things kind of move. Things have to move quickly, because when you're doing like stills, for example, what happens in those situations is that you make something and you can make, let's say, 20, 30 iterations. With animation, that's a little bit harder. To do 30 iterations of one animation is, insane, especially if you don't have a lot of time, which on this project we kind of did not have. Here are some breakdowns that just to show you how some of this kind of came together. For this piece, and when we were kind of thinking about how we're going to put this together, the first thing that came to my mind was I needed it to come from different sides. But how do I, like, it looked like a lot of animation, so I needed to be procedural here. I needed to find ways to do this a lot faster, maybe even 10 times faster if possible. So the first thing we did was to create a base. That was done in Illustrator. So these shapes were done in Illustrator and then imported into Blender, and then we just extruded that out. So this was kind of like the base shape. The second thing was to just animate that base shape, right? Just, again, make it move. Again, this is just the starting part of it, so we know that that's going to move either ways. And then next, I kind of use geometry nodes in Blender to kind of stack them up. And you can see that we needed like 4 layers of them, so we had like 4 stacks. But the problem here was that they had symmetry, or they looked the same. So using some weird math, modulo, if I'm being precise, we kind of made each of them turn at exactly 90 degrees from the other ones, so that they kind of have that same shape. And eventually, this is kind of what it looks like. So basically, what you're seeing is one thing that's animated, swapped into 4 places, and then now they're all coming together, so it kind of looks pretty interesting. But it's really the same thing. For this one, same process. We kind of made this in Illustrator, brought it into Blender, and then extruded that out. And then the next thing we did was to clone it 5 times, or 6 or 7, not sure. With geometry nodes, geometry looks very complex, and all of this may look like this is a lot of nodes and this is a lot of things moving around. But honestly, this is not as complex. This can really be done in Cinema 4D with just one cloner, to be honest. However, I do have custom nodes that I use. The only reason why it's broken out like this is when you start working with nodes, sometimes you may want to insert something in between your nodes and want to like make it a little bit interesting or add something else to it. So every time I import my custom node, I kind of just break it apart again, and then just in case I need to do something specific. The next thing was kind of introduce fall off. So we had this very tiny ball here that was kind of determined whether something was going to move up or down. And so when this ball kind of moved forward, the shape that was closest to it will kind of move up with it. And that's basically what you see right here. And small connection here. Pretty interesting. Something I didn't mention as well is that we also had this null here. It's kind of like a control that we use to determine what shape actually changes color. So here is this is really what controls all of that. And every time this null gets over any of those shapes, it will basically just change color. And this is basically what it looks like. The hardest part working with geometry nodes is that animation is kind of not always straightforward. When I was kind of doing this bounce, when I tried to move the ball down, the object will go down. Because again, this ball is kind of tied to. So at that point, we had to use, there's a second null kind of together so you don't see it. I kind of use the second null to control it going up or down, and then the ball could move freely on its own without having to affect the rest of things. And these are some of like the, we call it piece of the animation that kind of makes sense. Yeah. All of this was done, I don't know why it's not looping, but all of this was done using geometry nodes, even including that ball rolling over there. And this is what the final thing looks like. Again, you're going to notice that a lot of things are missing from this, so there.
Imagine a future of boundless possibility for African entrepreneurs. A world of innovation that spurs sustainable growth and prosperity. That's the vision of Consonance, and we're determined to make it a reality. We're aware that success is not only achieved through investment. That is why we work closely with entrepreneurs, providing localized solutions to their challenges. We believe that innovation, collaboration, and systems thinking are essential elements for Africa to drive sustainable growth and prosperity. We are proud of the impact we've made so far. We have supported 37 enterprises, with 43% of our founders being female. Our portfolio of companies is worth over $500 million, creating over 100,000 direct and indirect jobs, and generating over $350 million in aggregated revenue. We have successfully supported entrepreneurs in 7 countries across Africa and beyond. We understand that trust is the cornerstone of progress, and that's why we refreshed our identity to better express our core values and mission. Our new identity showcases our dedication to staying in alignment with the needs of our entrepreneurs and investors. And as Charles Munger said, the highest form of which civilization can reach is a seamless web of deserved trust. Not more procedure, just totally reliable people correctly trusting one another. Join us to empower Africa's builders and investors. Invest in the future of Africa with Consonance.
Thank you very much. I didn't do this alone. I worked with a couple of people. Especially, I think somebody that was really amazing on this project was Eyemi Adibute, who kind of did like some of the initial design explorations for this. And yeah, so thank you very much.